While John Owens is a dedicated hunter, he also spends a lot of time in the wilderness. One November day in Wisconsin, John and his friends were checking their traps when a surprising event occurred. As they examined the coyote traps, they discovered that something larger had been caught. The group was taken aback as they arrived at the site and surveyed the scene. It was a moment that would have a profound impact on their lives deep in the wilderness. The group found themselves in a difficult situation in the middle of the woods. A large animal was trapped in one of John's traps, which could be dangerous for John and his friends. A wounded animal is always unpredictable and potentially dangerous, but this was particularly concerning. The animal was not a small coyote. Its jaws were powerful enough to cause serious injury if it were to latch onto a human limb. John was faced with a critical situation. It began as a normal day for him as a hunter, but when he reached the coyote trap and discovered a huge timber wolf trapped instead, everything changed. He was at a loss for what to do, as it was a matter of life and death. The timber wolf's front paw was caught, and it was struggling to escape, clearly in pain. John realized that this was a complex situation. It was not just a matter of freeing the wolf, as it could turn on him in an instant. The potential danger of the massive creature attacking him, especially given its injured state, was very real. The wolf's injury made it more likely to be aggressive. John was in a precarious position. He had to make a decision that would keep him and his friends safe. He didn't want to abandon the wolf and leave it to suffer in the trap, as it could lead to it bleeding out, dying from exposure, or even worse, chew its own leg off. These options were not viable. He needed to find a solution that would address the situation without causing harm. John had to find a way to release the massive creature without putting himself in danger. Luckily, the traps he used were designed for smaller animals and didn't have teeth. They were meant to catch the animal's paw, similar to how a pair of handcuffs would, making it difficult for the animal to escape on its own until someone released it. Animals like a coyote or wolf may not be damaged by the trap that this wolf was caught in, but they aren't gonna be happy. The wolf was howling, not in pain, but because it was stuck and unable to get away. While wolves, especially lone ones, don't really attack humans that often in the wild, a trapped and threatened animal is far more likely to snap or react badly. John would have to keep this in mind if he was going to rescue the wild timber wolf. Would the animal respect his attempts to help, or would it lash out angrily? That remained to be seen, and it would play a vital part in John's decision. The timber wolf is listed by the Federal Endangered Species List as an endangered animal. That means it is illegal in Wisconsin to kill the animal. John didn't have the option of shooting the animal, since it would result in him going to jail and paying a huge fine in the best-case scenario. Should he be caught? That meant his options were limited. There was really just one way this could go. John would need to let the wolf go, and that was a dangerous proposition in itself. He was anxious, but first, how sure was John that this was actually a timber wolf? What if he had something else caught in his trap? Most people can't tell the difference between a wolf and a coyote. They're very similar in how they look, and the wolf is just a bit bigger in most cases. Both animals have the same type of fur and coloring. They're built like dogs as well, and are easy to mistake for one from far away. One of the hunter friends out with John started to wonder if the animal trapped in the trap might not be a coyote after all. The friends began to debate the idea and try to figure out if there was a way to tell exactly what kind of animal they were dealing with. In the end, John was convinced that this was a true timber wolf, thanks to the markings it bore and its size. How do timber wolves differ from other types of wolves? This type of animal is also called a gray wolf, and they're found everywhere in North America, as well as Eurasia. They're large animals weighing up to 100 pounds at their peak, and they tend to be gray with white and black marks across their body. Timber wolves have a relatively long lifespan under optimal conditions and can live up to 16 years. They are also relatively social for a wild animal and are highly intelligent. Despite their occasional interactions with humans, it is rare for wolves to attack unless they are infected with rabies. In some cases, a healthy wolf may attack, but this is very rare and usually occurs when they feel cornered.
Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story.
Most wolves have a natural fear of humans and try to avoid them. John was concerned not only because the animal in the trap was not a coyote, but also because it was a full-size timber wolf. The situation could turn dangerous at any moment, and he was willing to risk his life to free the animal. John felt a sense of apprehension as he prepared to release the timber wolf. He knew it was a risky task, but it was necessary to free the animal before it died trapped. He had the support of his friend and his father, who joined him on the hunting trip. All three of them were in agreement that the animal had to be freed. They carefully considered the different methods to release the wolf without anyone getting hurt. They decided the simplest approach would be the best. John's father went back to the truck and brought back a large piece of plywood and a gun as a precaution in case things went wrong, but the three men hoped they could release the wolf without incident. The wolf seemed to be getting used to the presence of humans. As John's father went to retrieve supplies from the truck, John and his friend remained with the trapped wolf and attempted to soothe it. The animal was exhausted from its attempts to escape and was panting heavily. John cautiously walked around the trapped timber wolf and examined the situation more closely. He knew that there was very little room for error. They had to release the wolf with one smooth move, or it could be dangerous for them. John put into motion the plan they had devised and took the plywood as a shield in case the wolf decided to attack. He felt uneasy as he approached the trapped animal. John's friend was filming the entire operation while his father held the gun at the ready in case the wolf went berserk. They had taken all necessary precautions given the potential danger of the situation. John slowly approached the trapped wolf. It was not going to be easy, but he had to try. As he moved closer, his father reassured him that he was ready with the rifle in case anything went wrong. It was the only reassurance John had. The time had come. John was as ready as he could be. He looked at his friend, who was there to offer support and encouragement. He could only offer moral support. This was the moment that John had been waiting for anxiously. He had to set the wolf free, and they had no idea how the wolf would react. There was a strategically placed notch in the plywood. The plan was to put it over the paw of the trapped wolf. John carefully maneuvered the wood over to the wolf and gently lowered the wood over the wolf's paw. This was it. The notch fit just right over the wolf's paw. John cautiously looked at the wolf over the wood. The creature was attacking the plywood, biting and scratching. It was obviously an aggressive animal and ready to attack, but would it understand that John was attempting to help it? He could only hope. While John was busy on the trap, the wolf was safely on the other side of the plywood sheet. However, this would only protect him while the wolf was actually trapped. There would be no way to stop the animal if it decided to attack after the trap was released. Among the animals found in the woods in Wisconsin, timber wolves are some of the dangerous animals that might attack when they're hungry. These predators are difficult to trap and even more difficult to release. In fact, many people would say it's not even possible to do it safely. You can either kill traps or you can shoot them. Wolves generally don't attack humans, but that doesn't mean they're not very lethal. You should never assume that a wolf will run away and not attack. So, if you see one in the wild, your best bet is to stay still. There are no other good choices. You need to be very careful and not look the wolf in the eyes. Avoid turning your back on the creature and running, since it will pursue. Instead, yell and wave your arms. You can also throw a rock or branch at the wolf to scare it off. It was finally time for John to let the wolf go free. He was finally ready to do something. With the plywood between himself and the wolf, he was going to be safe for a few minutes at least. When the wood came between the man and the wolf reacted badly. He started to freak out and bite the wood, showing how scared he was. John held the plywood with one hand, leaving only one hand free to release the trap. He worked carefully to free the wolf's paw, but it was a difficult task. Finally, John managed to release the wolf's paw. It only took a moment for the wolf to spin around and run off into the woods. John and his father and friend were safe and the wolf was free. They were relieved that the situation had been resolved without anyone getting hurt. They congratulated each other and were thrilled that they had successfully managed the situation. John's friend had filmed the entire event, and upon reviewing the footage, they were surprised by the wolf's reaction when it was freed. The video clearly showed the animal's actions as it ran off into the woods. The wolf briefly looked back at John as if to say thank you for saving its life. John hadn't noticed the wolf looking back at him when it happened, but he could see it clearly in the video. He was relieved that he had made the right decision and that he had done the right thing. The wolf was now free to run off and live its life.